Yeah, yeah, we're on our way. Well, cool, man. Well, hey, I want to begin our conversation before we get into your work. I love what you're doing by asking you this: how much of surviving the pandemic has influenced the way that you do work now? Are you feeling any reverberations from that time period?
Oh my gosh. Well, that's a really great question. So all of my work has always been remote. Our team has always been remote here at Indepreneur, and all of my work in any of the businesses that I'm involved in have been remote since long before the pandemic. So the changes to my personal sort of working environment and routine really hasn't changed. Although I've been very fortunate, my girlfriend was able to start going remote during the early part of the pandemic and has stayed remote since. So it's great. I have now a an office mate, so to speak, which is wonderful, and that's become a permanent thing, which is really cool. But in music, we saw very early on in the pandemic, the industry really take obviously a huge hit when it came to touring. And we saw a pretty big rush to a lot of artists, especially major artists that really started to take a close look at their online and digital infrastructure and the way that they were making money online because they needed to. All of a sudden, it became important to be able to do that. And early 2020 into 2021, we really saw a rush of people all of a sudden being like, well, now I'm interested in e-commerce. Now I'm interested how I'm connecting with my fans online. And that really started a ramp up into that sort of mindset, sort of across the industry, more than I think it ever had been. Certainly more than we had ever seen prior to 2020, and it's really continued ever since then. So, in a lot of ways, industry wide, there's been a renewed sense of focus on digital, on selling online, and it really hasn't gone away. Going into 2025 here. So in
Yeah,
some ways, yeah, there's been major shifts.
yeah. So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids. It's career day. And the kid in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer him?
That's an awesome question. That's an awesome way to put it. I help the musicians that you love, that your parents listen to on the radio, watch on TV. Uh, you know, you think of your favorite artists, you think of the Taylor Swifts of the world. We help them get their music out to people all across the world, all over the internet. We help them get their CDs and their vinyl and their T-shirts and their merchandise out to their fans, and we get that product into the hands of people who are interested in having it. That's what we do.
And that's hugely essential. So let me ask you this. What did you want to be when you were in the third grade, when you were a kid? What was your dream life?
When I was in the third grade, I would say that was probably around the time where I started to think I want to be a rock star.
Yeah.
That was right around the time where I started to play music. And actually, I was listening to a few of your episodes before we sat down here, and I thought about that question because I heard you ask it to some folks, and I was like, I think that's right around the time when I started to play music.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What was the first concert you saw? What was the first live experience that made you think I want to do that one day?
My first, oh man, well, my earliest experiences with music were actually like listening to Frank Sinatra with my grandpop in his car. And then I started getting exposed to music by Michael Jackson and all sorts of different stuff. I remember when I first saw Michael Jackson on MTV for the very first time. I was probably like 5 years old, and I said to my mom, like, "That's him," and I fell in love with music. My first concert, I believe I was in like the sixth grade. It was the Vans Warp Tour. It was my first experience going to
Yeah.
the Vans Warp Tour, and that threw me into the world of punk rock, which is really where I stayed for a very long time. I've been a rock musician my whole life, really since that age of 9 or 10,
Yeah.
and music has shaped me so much. I went to college for music production, so I cut my teeth in recording studios, and then I went on the road, and then somehow I found my way into this weird digital marketing world, and built a business around helping artists grow and connect with their fans, and it's been a wild ride.
Yeah. Who's been kind of your inspiration? Who's been a hero for you in this career?
Oh, there's so many. Um, there's so many different mentors, both close and people that I look at far away, books that I've read. It's so hard to pick one. One of the first marketing books that I really read and dug into, and I'm actually reading a new book from him right now, was Gary Vaynerchuk. I read back in, I want to say, probably 2014. I read his Jab, 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 Right Hook book. And that was one of the first social media marketing books that I read. And so I really became attached to that. And I followed a lot of what Gary has taught and talked about for a very long time. And he's a very inspirational guy and is not afraid to put himself out there. And so I really look up to him. I would say that he's somebody that is kind of a big inspiration for sure, amongst many others.
You know, the recording industry is such a brutal place, especially for recording contracts where we hear all these stories of musicians not getting their due. And I work in jazz radio and I see what you're doing is like the best liaison to the musician for them to get exposure and to make money. I'm always reaffirmed by all of those that are kind of in the middle of that between the recording contract and the touring and just making sure that they get what they're due. Do you feel like that's what you're doing?
Yeah, and I really appreciate that. One of the kind of founding ideas of our agency, IndieX, is when we talk to artists and especially artist managers, one of the areas that we really focus on is when it comes to e-commerce, right? Which is really where we focus a lot of our strategy and our execution when it comes to digital marketing. It's an area where the music industry has largely, as a whole, sort of lagged behind. They focus a lot on streaming royalties, on licensing, on touring, and all of that is great. However, there's a huge opportunity for artists to make money in a way that they can control through e-commerce, especially for artists that, have a large audience, which is really a lot of the artists that we work with. There's a lot of opportunity to drive revenue there that is really just left on the table. And so a lot of the conversations that I have is like, look, there's money being left on the table and it's a revenue stream that you can control and own. That right now, nobody has their hand in that pocket for you. You can control how that flows. And it can be a revenue source that's active for you and that you can kind of leverage around. And so, yeah, that's really important to me. It's one of the big reasons that our agency exists. It's kind of like an arbitrage, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So let me ask you this. What was the moment that you knew this was going to be the job for you? Was there a client? Was there an artist that you hooked up with? Was there a moment where you were confirmed that, I'm not going to be the musician. I'm going to get into the job of promoting the musicians. Was there a moment like that for you where you knew this was your life?
There really wasn't one moment like that, but I will say there was a few different moments that really opened up my eyes to the direction that I was going and kind of affirmed to me that I was excited about it. I cut my teeth in digital marketing actually outside of music. Um, I started working as a consultant with local businesses and some nonprofits between touring gigs and between production gigs, actually, when I was just out of college. And I started seeing like, oh, I feel like I'm pretty good at this. Like I'm getting some wins for some of these clients that I have. I'm building up a little book of business. This is cool. And then right around 2017, I had been doing that for a few years. I've been doing it for about 3 or 4 years. And I met my business partner, Kyle, who was starting this fledgling Indepreneur company that was both teaching and coaching artists to learn about digital marketing. And he said to me, "Hey, I'm standing up an agency," which was, kind of where my wheelhouse was. And I'm working with bigger artists there. And I'd love for you to be a part of it. And we met and became close. And that kind of opened up the door. And when we started to see what was possible with just a few small moves with some of the artists that we were working with at the agency at these very early days, how, like one email campaign can generate, well, this is a story actually just from today. One of our account strategists reached out to me this morning and was like, oh, hey, one of our clients, we sent one email and they sold 200 CDs and 45 upsells
Wow.
yesterday.
Wow.
And when you see that kind of movement, it's like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy what can be done here. And
Yeah.
it's so slept on, it's so unapproached. And if you look at business and you look at traditional e-commerce companies and online companies, this is all over the place. But when you look at the music industry, it feels like it's behind. So when those kinds of small moments started to happen, especially early days, it was like, wow, there's really something here and we're making an impact. And it was those kind of moments paired with, the earlier days of like, I feel like I'm getting somewhere with this. It's going somewhere. Those were the moments where I looked, and now I look back at them and I say to myself, okay, yeah, like I could see the path kind of in hindsight here.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. How do you balance this life of being on the business side and entrepreneur and obviously being a creative that still has that musician soul? How do you take all of that and balance it and do the best you can with all of that every day?
Well, I still play a lot of music.
Yeah.
I've got, a bunch of guitars
Oh,
behind
yeah.
me here.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love to play. I still love to write. So I still work on my own artistry projects, and I have visions for that in the future of what I could see that becoming and being, which is cool. That's always going to be a part of me. But from a very early from a very early point in time, I think the thing that drew me into digital marketing and in particular, like what you can do on social media with content is stuff. I've always felt that it's an extension of creativity. And this is what I so often tell my clients is like, take who you are as an artist, take who you are as a creative, and pour that into the way that you present yourself online, because that's going to be the thing that makes people love you, that makes people want to stick and be a fan that hangs around. That's going to be the personality that keeps people here, especially when you're, between releasing music, when you're between touring, when you're maybe not as active. You've got this big, bad, wide internet that you can connect with your fans on any single day of the week. And it's amazing. There's never been an opportunity like that before. And it just continues to get bigger, really. It just continues to get more expansive. And so, from a creative perspective, both for me, the way that I view myself as an entrepreneur, even doing things like this, like joining you on the show, I love to be able to do this because I view it as an extension of the creativity that I've been blessed to have musically, to be able to talk about these kinds of things. I kind of look at it as one and the same.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Of all of the indie artists that are out there right now, who is the success story from a marketing standpoint and overall that you look up to and see as kind of a gold standard?
Oh man. I feel like there's a new one, every few years.
Yeah.
Um, there's a hip hop artist named La Russell that
Yeah.
became fairly popular over the last 3 or 4 years, and he is really inspiring. I can't even say that I really like love the music. Like hip hop isn't super my thing. Like I dig it, but I come from the punk world. I like it, but what's inspiring about what he's doing is he built this grassroots amazing community of people that would come out to shows that he would throw at his house, and he stood up like a bidding sort of pay what you want for tickets kind of system. And these shows became enormous, and he created a whole culture around it. And anytime independent artists are doing things like that, I'm just like, man, that is it.
Yeah,
That is the kind
absolutely.
of stuff that you love to see. Like that's the sort of stuff that is so innovative that it pulls everybody's attention over to it. The entire industry looks at it.
So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you, you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've accumulated. What advice would you give your younger self?
I would say, and I still have to tell myself this almost every single day, is like, don't take things too seriously. Have fun while you're on the journey,
Yeah.
because the hard days are going to feel a little less hard if you're smiling through it. And that's probably the biggest piece of advice that I would give to my younger self is enjoy it a little bit more. It's going to be great.
Yeah. So of everything that you've done up to this point in your life and evolved into, what are you the proudest of?
Oh man, that's a great question. I would say I'm proudest of the people that I've met through. I'm proudest of the relationships that I've built through this entrepreneurial, weird, creative journey of mine. I've met so many good people in so many different spaces, people that have become business partners, clients, friends. Um, I've met so many wonderful people and have seen how they're changing the world. And I think that that's probably what I'm most proud of is the relationships that get built up over time are ones that, I'm a very relationship driven kind of guy.
Yeah.
Um, and those are the kind of things that I think last a lifetime. You build up connections with people that you never know where they're going to lead you a year down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, whatever it might be. And that's probably what I'm most proud of. Those sort of connections stand above any financial result or achievement or campaign that we've run or anything like that. All of that stuff is icing on the cake and wonderful, but the relationships that have been built over those things is really, what when I lay my head down at night, that's the kind of stuff that I'm like, yeah, we're doing cool things. I'm making cool connections with great people and that makes an impact.
So at the end of the day, Jack, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, everyone that you work with, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I am definitely someone who wants to drive the best possible outcome for everyone that I'm working with, whether that be the amazing team that we have at our company. We have a team of amazing marketers, brilliant strategists, just really bright musicians. Our clients are obviously wonderful, but my perspective and outlook on myself is I'm always looking for ways to create win-win-win scenarios for everyone that's in the circle that we're working with is how do we make something that's great that everybody is winning at. That's really like a north star for me, I would say. And so I look at myself that way every day and I say am what I do is what I'm doing today aligning with that goal.
So if anyone wants to get involved with IndieX, they want to delve into your music, anything in your world, if they have questions, how can they do it?
Yeah, thanks. That's awesome. If you're an artist or you work with artists that have a large fan base, at our agency, we typically work with artists that have, I would say, around like 500,000 followers across social media is usually a pretty good landmark of artists that we can really do a lot of awesome damage for in terms of revenue generation and monetization. You can check us out over at indepreneur.io/about-IndieX. That takes you right to a page that's all about the agency. And if you like what you see, you can apply to work with us, have a free sort of strategy call with me to talk about what you've got going on and see if there's a fit. Indepreneur.io is the overall Indepreneur company. So if you're an artist that's looking to grow and looking to learn digital marketing, we've got a ton of resources there as well for people that are cutting their teeth. So that's where you can find me. You can also find me on Instagram at the Atlas Jack. That's where I'm talking about music, talking about music marketing, talking about business, sharing my music, sharing life. So if you ever want to hang out with me on Instagram, you can always shoot me a DM there, and I'd love to chat with you. But that's where you can find me and keep up with what I'm up to.
Jack, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Joe, thanks so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it. Really love what you're doing here. These were awesome questions, some of them that took me by surprise. So this was a blast. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.